After 3 long days at the NFL Draft,
The Seattle Seahawks have traded
Shedeur Sanders was finally selected in the 5th round with the 144th draft pick by the Cleveland Browns. We all predicted that Sanders' draft stock would slide, but not by this much. I mean, hey, don't get it twisted. Sanders is very talented and will do wonders in the league when his time comes. However, the Pittsburgh Steelers screwed up here by not drafting him, but hey, that's another story for another day.
Shedeur was right there.
I know, he was right there.
Despite Sanders being drafted late, he'll potentially join a list of notable NFL superstars who were drafted in the later rounds, like George Kittle, Richard Sherman, Puka Nacua, and, of course, the GOAT himself, Tom Brady. But hey, in the meantime, here at TPS, we're going to explore the 10 reasons why Shedeur Sanders wasn't drafted in the 1st round. Arm strength and athleticism. Scouts and analysts were worried about Sanders' arm strength and athleticism and how either of those wouldn't translate to the professional level. Other teams weren't convinced that his style of play would work at the professional level either. Sanders has a good deep ball, but many scouts and draft analysts alike said his deep ball isn't great. His short throws are wobbly at times, which is definitely a concern for teams that run a lot of quick timing routes to get the ball moving in a much faster-paced environment like the NFL. Sanders isn't a mobile quarterback either, as he was sacked 94 times during his 2 seasons with the Colorado Buffaloes, and his ability to extend plays with his footwork is very limited.
Shedeur backing up again, taken down again.
Which is why we saw NFL teams draft other quarterbacks ahead of Sanders. Because, well, they're able to show great mobility and athleticism with their legs compared to Sanders. Some scouts have compared Sanders to backup quarterback Tyrod Taylor with their similar build and strengths. But, well, the comparison stops there, as it all comes down to Sanders folding under some high-pressure situations. Despite that, Sanders needs to improve and find his groove once he gets onto the practice field and begin working with his new Cleveland Browns teammates. On-field performance. Although we spoke about Sanders' on-field performance briefly in the arm strength and athleticism section, it's also important to note his on-field performance has certainly been called into question. Oh sure, his father and Jackson State/Colorado Buffaloes head coach Dion Sanders laughed it off, but it should be noted that Sanders has tended to hold on to the ball for far too long, and was sacked 94 times in his last 2 seasons at the FBS level, which is a massive concern. On top of that, Sanders skipped the on-the-field workouts at the NFL Combine and the Big 12 Pro Day, which is never a good sign for NFL teams looking to find and develop their next signal caller.
People said that Shedeur was trying to dictate how he wanted things to go and made them feel small. Even at the Pro Day, the entire Big 12 have an advantage.
Even though Sanders didn't let the critics get to him, Sanders did work out at the Colorado CU Football Showcase in early April, saying that he was thankful for all the resources he has available.
And the GM Andrew Berry for drafting me and giving me an opportunity to fulfill my dreams of playing in the NFL.
But regardless, Sanders needs to learn and develop from his new Browns teammates like veterans Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett, and pick up a couple of tips on how to perform at the NFL level. Coaches simply weren't impressed with the interviews. When anyone applies for a job, employers expect job candidates to showcase why they should earn the position at the company. In Shedeur Sanders' case, NFL coaches just weren't impressed by interviewing him. They felt like he came off as too arrogant and brash during the interviews, which is a massive red flag for some NFL teams. An anonymous assistant coach said interviewing Sanders was the worst formal interview I've been in my life.
And this was the worst 20 minutes of my life. I couldn't get, and so I didn't view it as.
And also said that Sanders was very entitled due to being raised by his father, Dion. An anonymous AFC executive said, "It didn't go great in our interview. He wanted to dictate what he's going to do and what's best for him. He makes you feel small." Todd McShay revealed that Sanders did not have a good interview with the New York Giants head coach Brian Daboll during a private visit when an install package came in. Sanders didn't like it, and Daboll didn't appreciate him not liking the install package.
Shedeur didn't have a great interview with Brian Daboll in a private visit. An install package came in.
Like we said earlier, it's just never a good sign when the interview goes south. Job applicants, or in this case, future NFL players, need to interview at their best. You know, if they want to take that next step in their professional career. Deion Sanders having influence on which teams should draft Shedeur. As we all know, Colorado Buffaloes head coach Deion Sanders is Shedeur's father, and he will always want what's best for his son. However, there does come a time when a figure like Sanders, with his institutional knowledge and influence, can be a bit much. Deion Sanders has ripped anonymous critics of Shedeur before the 2025 NFL Draft and took some shots at Joe Flacco by saying, "Flacco, my age," even though Flacco is 17 years younger than Deion Sanders. Eventually, Shedeur was drafted by the Cleveland Browns, who signed Flacco earlier this offseason, which, will probably make for some awkward moments during practice.
NFL Draft. The Cleveland Browns select Shedeur Sanders.
On top of that, Sanders also had a list of teams that he would have loved to see draft his son, and a list of teams that he didn't want drafting Shedeur. Dion responded by saying this supposed list was a lie, and that he knows a lot of NFL owners and a lot of other big-name figures. Despite that, it didn't help Shedeur's case on why the Browns ended up drafting him in the 5th round. As mentioned earlier, there is nothing wrong with the father wanting the best for his child, but Deion Sanders won't be Shedeur's coach anymore, and he'll have to learn to adapt to practicing in games without Dion in the NFL. It's as simple as that. Off-the-field concerns. Before Sanders was drafted by the Cleveland Browns with the 144th pick, he faced character concerns and came across as pretty nervy during pre-draft interviews. Other teams questioned his professional approach as he expressed an interest in pursuing a music career. Sure, other athletes have released music, like his father Dion and Ron Artest, but this supposed music path showed NFL teams a lack of commitment to the sport, especially when NFL teams value football players who will dedicate their time and effort to performing at their best on the field and always looking to improve every week.
7 yards deep. Lets it go to the sideline. Big 6.
Sanders did not do himself any favors by sitting out of the East-West Shrine Bowl practices and the game itself, but appeared at the bowl anyway and met with NFL coaches. Wanting to make music and a questionable commitment to the NFL may be nitpicking, but when you add everything up, it does make you wonder if Sanders can actually lead professionals in an NFL locker room. However, it's still not known if any of these off-field issues will affect Shedeur's performance and growth in the NFL. I guess we'll just have to wait and see what'll happen when the 2025 season really kicks off. Other quarterbacks being evaluated much higher. Before the start of the 2025 NFL Draft, Shedeur Sanders was projected to get drafted in the 1st round due to his name recognition and being the son of Deion Sanders. But quarterbacks like Jackson Dart, Tyler Schaum, Jalen Milroe, and Dylan Gabriel were all drafted before Sanders. Cam Ward was going to be the first pick of the draft, no questions asked. However, NFL talent evaluators were less impressed with Sanders than the draft analysts. As mentioned earlier, scouts were concerned about Shedeur Sanders getting sacked 94 times during his time at the Colorado Buffaloes, even though he completed 74% of his passes in 2024.
Opener comes down to this play. Sanders gets the feet set toward the end zone for the game.
Dart, who was drafted in the 1st round by the New York Giants, completed 69.3% of his passes with Ole Miss in 2024. Shao, who was drafted by the New Orleans Saints, played college football since 2018 and completed 62.7% of his passes with Louisville in 2024. Jalen Milroe, who was drafted by the Seahawks, completed 64.3% of his passes in 2024. And Dylan Gabriel, who was drafted by the Browns and is Sanders' new teammate, completed 72.9% of his passes with Oregon in 2024. So, even though the other quarterbacks have slightly smaller passing percentages, the quarterback selected before Sanders had a bigger impact on NFL scouts and the coaches who interviewed them. Once Sanders gets his feet wet in his first few NFL practices, he should emerge on the Cleveland Browns depth chart. You know, depending on what happens in the 2025 season. Just too much publicity. Sanders has caused too much publicity due to his name recognition and, being the son of Deion Sanders, who was a very polarizing Hall of Fame cornerback during his time in the NFL. While some teams didn't mind this publicity, other teams found Sanders to be a bit of a distraction. Because of his famed personality, his father's influence, and his on-field performance. Sanders also had his number 2 jersey retired by the Colorado Buffaloes, which drew a lot of publicity and quite a bit of controversy, with some people calling the retirement premature.
CU announced today that Travis Hunter's number 12 and Shedeur Sanders' number 2 will be retired by the school.
Don't get us wrong, Sanders did some great things during his 2 seasons with the Buffaloes, but some people thought the jersey retirement was to appease his father Deion Sanders, even though Although Sanders never won a conference title, and the Buffaloes were blown out 14-36 by the BYU Cougars in the 2024 Alamo Bowl. Once Sanders was drafted, a video was posted of him jumping into a swimming pool. Although the video was lighthearted, it can be a bit distracting and perceived as negative by others. Look, not every NFL team wants to have a diva in the locker room. Limited quarterback market. There were 14 quarterbacks taken in the 2025 NFL Draft, with Shedeur Sanders being the 6th quarterback drafted this year. Many teams, at the start of the 2025 season in March, addressed their need for a quarterback, while other teams like the Tennessee Titans and New York Giants drafted their quarterback of the future. Although Sanders is joining the Cleveland Browns, who have a large quarterback room with Joe Flacco, Kenny Pickett, and fellow 2025 NFL draftee Dylan Gabriel on the roster, with the team being pretty much done with Deshaun Watson. But regardless, Sanders is going to have to earn that starting job. Other NFL teams drafted quarterbacks who will either become backups or the successors to seasoned veterans on their current rosters. Tyler Shaw was drafted in the second round of the draft by the New Orleans Saints as insurance to Derek Carr. However, one of the teams that could have really drafted Sanders but didn't was the Pittsburgh Steelers, who many thought would draft him with the 21st pick of the 2025 draft. However, the Steelers didn't draft Shedeur Sanders, and instead, they drafted Will Howard with the 197th pick. That decision may come back to bite them, as Sanders was selected by their longtime AFC North rivals. So if Sanders becomes a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback, he could really be making them hurt. Not sure if that's going to happen, but if it does, well, that's just going to have to be the Steelers' cross to bear. Decision-making and toughness. Although Shedeur Sanders is talented and should do well competing for the starting quarterback job with the Cleveland Browns, his decision-making skills have been questioned in recent days. Sanders has read defensive coverages slowly at times, played in a wonky offense, coached by former NFL head coach Pat Shurmur, even though he threw passes to Travis Hunter, arguably the best football player in the country. And yet still, some of his critics have said that his deep ball just isn't accurate enough. Sanders has shown to hold on to the ball for far too long at times, which can be a problem for offenses running hurry-up styled plays, especially when Sanders has to compete against some of the NFL's most elite defenses like the Pittsburgh Steelers defense and the Baltimore Ravens, who just so happen to play in the AFC North. Shedeur Sanders is not going to be a one-man franchise quarterback coming to the Browns. He is, he's really going to have to compete for his spot on the roster, unlike his time at Jackson State in Colorado. However, Sanders' toughness is unquestionable. He can certainly find success on offense, even though he doesn't quite have the size or arm strength. But the question is, will Sanders' toughness show during his NFL games? Whether that be in the preseason, regular season, or postseason? Well, I guess we're just gonna have to wait and find out. The Browns' perceived needs. The Cleveland Browns needed a new quarterback after Deshaun Watson re-aggravated his Achilles. The Browns then traded Dorian Thompson-Robinson to the Philadelphia Eagles and replaced him with Kenny Pickett. The Browns brought back veteran Joe Flacco, who led the Browns to a playoff appearance in 2023, and drafted Dylan Gabriel with the 94th pick of the 2025 NFL Draft, and then, of course, Shedeur with the 144th pick. So, the Browns have a fully loaded quarterback rotation, but one or two of those quarterbacks might not even make the final 53-man roster by the time the 2025 regular season opens up. Sanders told reporters after he was drafted that he has some things to clean up in his game, and will be a great fit for the Browns. Well, for his sake, we certainly hope that that's the case. Because, man, it's gonna be ruthless in that quarterback battle royale that they got going on in Cleveland. But hey, what do you think is the key reason for Shedeur Sanders sliding all the way down to the 5th round of the draft? Do you agree with our reasons on this list? Let us know in the comment section below. If you like this video and learned a thing or two, then hey, clicking the like button helps out a ton. And you know, we really appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, then hey, subscribing is a great idea because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching and we'll see you guys next time.